you're saying Emery over Klopp?
100%, yeah, just the one trophy maybe. I won't be too greedy.
You can't have the Premier League title.
Steven Gerrard's birthday completely ruined.
Wayne Rooney's not a very good manager. There's not much more to be said.
Okay, well, hopefully there is.
They will never learn what they actually are, which is nothing.
Apologies to Wayne Rooney and his family. Hello and welcome to the Sportsman Untitled. We're going to be talking a little bit of Aston Villa today. I have with me Dan from AVFC Faithful. How are you doing, Dan?
Yeah, not bad, thank you, mate. You okay?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I'm also joined by Sam Penfold, the Sportsman social media extraordinaire. How are you doing, Sam?
Very well today, very well indeed. Thank you, Joey.
Ready to talk some Villa, boys?
Always.
Can't wait.
Fantastic. So I'm going to get straight into it, and Dan, I'm going to come to you first with this one. Is Unai Emery the third best manager in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think he's more close to second than he is fourth. I think it's different because I think a lot of coaches, you're sort of seeing them more head coaches than managers, whereas he's taken over more of an overall role at the club. He's in charge of so much more than just the coaching of the team, that I think in a couple of years Klopp and Guardiola are obviously going to go eventually. I think Emery's going to be here longer than they are now. And I think he's going to have a tenure that looks better at the time. But right now, there's no one I'd take apart from I'd probably only take Guardiola as well, because he's more of an ethos as well. But yeah, I think he's definitely closer to second and fourth.
So you're saysaying Emery over Klopp? If it came down to it, if Klopp was available?
100%, yeah, because I think it's horses for courses, it's managers for clubs, and it's who suits who. If we had Pochettino, we wouldn't be in the position we are now, and that's all down to Emery. And I don't think that Klopp could sort of emulate what he's done at Liverpool, where he has now with Villa, and I don't think that Emery could probably do it with Liverpool either.
And I think it's interesting, Sam, when Emery was announced, I think mixed reaction among English fans. I think, speaking as someone who isn't an Aston Villa fan, what did you think when Unai Emery was first appointed?
You see the work he's done in Europe, and you can't fault it. You see what he's done with the likes of Villarreal and especially Sevilla, and you're like, right, well, this manager's great, but then you look at the work, or his body of work when he was in Arsenal, and you're like, is it really going to work? Aston Villa obviously had potential to become a really big club. They should be a really big club, but could Unai Emery get them there? And you're like, not sure, because of the way they've just jumped around a little bit, and they've kind of flirted with being a big club, but never quite got into that mix. But yeah, Unai Emery has come in and he's taken it by storm, hasn't he, really? Fantastic manager for Aston Villa. Suits them down to a T. I think when you look at the job he came in to do, to replace Steven Gerrard as well, what Gerrard had done with the same group of players, more or less, and then what Unai Emery's been able to do with them, it's unbelievable. Like, his transformation is just solid. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. Makes you quite annoyed as a non-Aston Villa fan, looking at some of the other managers that are in big Premier League clubs, and it's like, why has that manager gone under the radar? Yeah, for what he's done at Aston Villa, it's sensational.
And Dan, I think it definitely felt to me at the time when Unai Emery was appointed, there was a lot of snobbishness, I think, mainly based on that Arsenal stint. People that hadn't really paid attention at what he'd done since the success that he'd had in Europe. What was the mood among Aston Villa fans when he first took the job?
I mean, it was joy, because Gerrard was gone anyway. It was a horrible nature around the club. Unai Emery's the first proper big name actual manager that we've had for, you're talking over 15 years now. It sort of changed the whole way that the club looks at how we're operating as well, in the fact that it was done so through Nasser Suarez, went and got him himself. Walked out the Fulham game, sacked Gerrard. 2 weeks later, he's down in Spain. He's getting Unai Emery to the club. It puts a lot of trust in you when your owner's going out and doing that, and it doesn't feel like a board member situation. But it was just joy at the fact that we've got our first proper tactician manager, because we've tried the whole good feeling around the club. We had Dean Smith, it felt great, but then we weren't becoming a Premier League team we wanted to be. Steven Gerrard was a failed experiment. This is less of an experiment and more of like a development of the club structure as a whole. And so it was more just tepid excitement. And again, it always feels good, because you know when there's a divide, it's better than when there's an overround. Like, the media loved the idea of us getting Gerrard in, because it was Steven Gerrard. Whereas when it was Unai Emery, you got half of them going, what a great manager, and the other half going, oh, but like you said, remember the Arsenal tenure. So I mean, I was buzzing. It was arguably one of the most exciting times as a Villa fan the whole time I've been alive. So, and he's only gone to sort of, eclipse that with what he's done at the club. So I think generally you're looking at Villa fans that are excited, but you obviously, you get the few that are, harbingers of doom, so to speak.
I think you do get those at every single club, definitely. But looks like it's going well, broadly. I mean, obviously, we're speaking in the wake of the Bournemouth result, 2-2 draw. What do you think went wrong in that one? And do you think there was any worrying signs going forward, or do you think it was just one of those days?
I mean, before the game, you're looking at that as a fixture that you'll want to be taking 3 points from, obviously, same as the Forest game beforehand. The issue is that came with it that Bournemouth, we look at these as fixtures as Bournemouth away should be winning, Man United away should be drawing, for example. But you don't take into account form there. Bournemouth obviously eclipsing what they usually do. What went wrong really was just, it was slow, and it was sort of, we expected the game to come to us rather than actually taking it to them, which is strange. The Zaniolo experiment didn't work, which is unfortunate, but I don't think it's sort of time to be, throwing the bed sheets out and telling him to get out of the club and stuff. But it was one of those fixtures where you kind of look at it, in retrospect, as a point gain, not 2 points dropped. Once you watch the game play out, definitely not worried. It's more a case of you're going to have bad games come out of any part of the season. It's all about making sure you get 1 point or 3 points from them. The Spurs result, people look back at that and say the performance wasn't ideal. To me, it was. We matched them perfectly to what we wanted to do. But again, Bournemouth made it uncomfortable for us. They countered us when they needed to. We had a lot of empty final third possession that we weren't doing much with. But that comes down to just, a lot of it's not system based. A lot of it's just, I think he's still a work in progress around this team, and I still don't think it's his finished article. I think there's a couple key members that he could and probably will change out over time. Obviously, it's horses for courses, like I mentioned earlier. Same with managers, same with players in matches. I just think there was a couple bits that probably didn't click how he wanted it to. But, I mean, you're going to have those. It's all about making the most out of it when you do. And thankfully, in my opinion, we did.
100%. And you touched on one of them there. Obviously, I personally viewed it as a little bit of a statement summer that Villa had this time. Pau Torres, Diaby, Yuri Tillemans, Longley, Zaniolo, you mentioned him there. How have the new signings done, in your opinion, as a collective? Were you happy with them as a bunch that came in?
It's an unbelievable summer. That's our first ever big club summer, that is. I mean, we signed 3 first team, as you'd expect. Diaby came in straight away, scored the goal against Newcastle. He's been impressive in his overall play as well. Pau Torres had a slower start, and then he's just sort of developed into this masterful centre-half that looks like he's never not played for this system. It makes no sense. He doesn't feel like a new sign. It just feels like we've got Tyrone Mings again, but at the moment he's performing to probably a bit higher level than Mings was at his time. Obviously, Tielemans is a free. It's a win-win situation. You don't pay a lot to get him in. He's coming in as a substitute anyway. He had a rough start, and then you're thinking, well, some Villa fans are thinking, I personally wasn't, but is this probably not going to work out? Again, a lot of these players, they take time to develop into the roles that Emery brings through. The only one you're probably looking at isn't working is Zaniolo, but that's a signing that was used to cover Buendia, and as soon as you lose a player like Buendia, you're looking to match what he brought through. And again, he wasn't, but we've offset that with Bailey's improvement this season, and Bailey has taken up the role that Buendia had, which was coming off the bench. Arguably, that's where he's best, apart from yesterday, which is going to make me look a bit silly. But he's usually much better coming off the bench like Buendia was the season before. So you can't not be impressed with that. The way we balanced the books with the outgoings as well was really impressive. And, the buyback clauses, the club's just making... We're not Man City, but they're making Man City moves. They moved on Douglas Luiz with the buy-on clause, thinking that perhaps they'd come back and retake him. They didn't choose to in the end, but they had that option. I've always wanted us to become a club that can afford to do that, and we have done so. So it was a really exciting summer, and it was one that hits you. But again, with that comes expectation with some fans, and I'm quite lucky in the position that I'm in, that I'm able to sort of view it from a different aspect, and I kind of view it from just a pure footballing one, rather than but what about this? And if we drop points here, what about don't worry about that. Just the summer was so exciting that you kind of take with it more excitement than expectation, I think.
Absolutely, and this is one that I want to put to both of you. You mentioned Manchester City there. Obviously, that's coming up on Wednesday night. Sam, I'm going to come to you first. Out of 10, How do you rate Aston Villa's chances in that one?
I think based on the City performance yesterday and the suspensions of Rodri and Jack Grealish, you'd have to fancy Villa's chances a lot, especially back in their home form at Villa Park as well. It's superb, it goes without saying. Everyone knows just how dominant Aston Villa have been there. It won't be easy for Man City to rock up without their centrepiece of Rodri and without the impact of someone like Jack Grealish, who has gone out of his way to not play Aston Villa for the last 3 games that Manchester City have played him. He was conveniently injured for the 2 last season and then kicks a ball away yesterday to get his 5th yellow of the season. It's almost like he's running scared.
You said it.
Who am I to judge Jack Grealish's decisions?
Are you sure Dan's the Aston Villa fan out of the
I'm just
two of you?
I'm playing a happy neutral in this role. I would say, if I had to put a number on it, I think Aston Villa stand in 7.5.
7.5.
Out of 10 chance of beating Manchester City tomorrow.
Go on then, Dan.
On Wednesday.
Higher or lower? What's your over-under for Sam's 7.5?
I mean, if we're going straight on a 3 points result, I'd probably say 8. But that's just to beat you, really.
There's a lot of positivity in this room. I've got to say, they're the treble winners. They're Premier League champions forever.
Yeah, but they can lose games, and they lose against smaller clubs than us, and they lose against similar sized clubs to us. I don't see it being a system of they're bringing through a lot of so much expectation on Man City every time they play football to play the exact same way that they do each time and to be where they need to be. I mean, them languishing just, I think it's 1 point or 2 points above us now is nowhere where they want to be. They don't want us chasing their tails. They want to be everyone chasing theirs. You're looking at Liverpool, they're facing the puff above them. We're going to be developing a system where our home form is similar to Liverpool's, where we have the home base, everyone goes there. You're probably not going to get much more than a point if you're lucky. Then you're just looking at trying to beat them at home. So, I mean, I think now people have got to start viewing these games as, it's not like you're going to just, 17th place Aston Villa, they're struggling, they don't win away, they draw at home. No, it's more a system of, they're becoming the Liverpool system where, how would you think Man City are going to go up against Liverpool away? They're probably hoping for a draw. I'm 100% certain that I think a lot of those City players and definitely the City club staff will be thinking, we'd be lucky if we just get away with a point there, and hopefully Arsenal can take some points off them and stuff, or they take points off Arsenal, because they're going to be looking on Saturday as well and thinking, Villa can beat Arsenal. Well, if we can beat Arsenal, we can beat Man City. At home, I have absolutely no fears at all this season. But away, it would be a different story.
You look at their form, Man City's form without Rodri as well. When he was suspended earlier this season, they missed him for 3 games, and I think they lost all 3 of those games. So they don't have a like-for-like replacement as much as they want John Stones to do it. He's not really fit. Rico Lewis can't do it. Not yet, anyway. Calvin Phillips doesn't get trusted. I'd be fully anticipating a strong Aston Villa performance. Also, just to flip one to you, Dan. Sorry, Jerry.
Go for it. Flip away.
When you look at the fact that you are now just 1 point above Manchester City and you've dropped 2 points yesterday, and they conveniently then obviously draw with Spurs. Again, you're not anticipating being above Man City, but when you look at it in that sort of perspective, do you see it as like an opportunity missed, or are you just happy to be in the mix?
I think it's hard because obviously every time you drop points, you're disappointed anyway. And then when you look at the table and you look at what you could be we look at, if we'd have beaten, we'd have scored the last minute winner against Wolves, we'd have beaten Bournemouth, you're looking at basically near enough top of the league. Obviously, we've missed a lot of chances to be in a quote-unquote Leicester situation this season. Not saying that's what we would actually be doing, but to have that season where you're rivaling them. Personally, I'm happy as long as we're progressing. This year's, again, is still another development year for me. If we're finishing or even placing, at the moment we're above Newcastle, United and Spurs, which is ridiculous when
United's
you look at the start of the season.
Hard,
no, true. Notice how I didn't say Chelsea there as well. But you look at those as well and you think, well, that's so exciting. It's hard not to take so much positives when you've had so much negatives as a Villa fan for 10 years. But again, in all honesty, I am relatively upset that we're going for a weekend where we could have been going in Wednesday going, we're playing, 4th place Manchester City while we're 3rd place Aston Villa. That would have been a nice little statement to put out there. But we'll be fine on Thursday. We'll be above them anyway.
And just one more point on Manchester City. And again, it's one that I'd like to get both your views on. Sam, I'll let you go first as our neutral voice. After Erling Haaland, is Ollie Watkins the best striker in the Premier League? Is there anyone you're having in that slot above him? Where, how are you breaking this down?
I think Ollie Watkins just isn't an out-and-out striker. I think he gets a lot of goals. He finds himself in good goal-scoring opportunities and does take a bulk of his chances. Sounds like I'm describing the second best striker in the league.
I was going to say, you just described for me a striker. You said he's not an out-and-out striker, but he scores goals, gets into goal-scoring positions and plays up front, which is a striker. I
think you look at some of the opportunities that go begging sometimes for Ollie Watkins, and when me and Dan spoke earlier this season, we highlighted that he is a hot and cold type of striker, and he can hit his really hot form and he can hit his cold form. And granted, any striker can have a purple patch, but I don't see Ollie Watkins as a striker that you could take out of this Aston Villa system and get the same results from. So that, for me, is why he wouldn't be the second best striker in the league. But he's certainly in with a shout of being top 4, top 5.
Do you think it's an example of why Emery is considered the third best manager in the league, certainly in this room at least, in how he's managed to improve Watkins? I think there's a few players in that Villa team that you can say have been improved by Emery. Would you say Watkins is one of them?
Yeah, 100%. You look at his record under Unai Emery, and it's superb. He's gone through such a turn in his probably tactical understanding of what his role and responsibilities are, and he's not a striker that's necessarily concerned about scoring goals. They love scoring goals, but he knows that his work off the ball will create space for John McGinn to make a late run into the box, or it will create space for Moussa Diaby to come in from the right wing. He's such a well-rounded team player that you'd have to pin some of that on Unai Emery's tactical genius, I think.
And Dan, is Sam right? Is Ollie Watkins a little way short of being the second best striker in the Premier League?
It's hard because I don't know who I could think of above him, is my problem. I'm trying to think of, obviously Haaland, but I'm trying to think of other strikers that are out and out performing to the level that he does each week. I think the problem with Watkins is he's a system striker. You take Watkins out of our system, replace him with Duran, we do not get the same results. You take Watkins out of our system and put Callum Wilson there, we do not get the same results. Or Isak there, we do not, because Ollie Watkins is, the only way I can describe it is, he's clay, right, by Dean Smith, but Unai Emery shaped him into what he is now. And he's the striker that he would be brilliant at Arsenal, because if he gets moulded into the Arsenal form and the way Arsenal play, he's probably better. I mean, he's better than Gabriel Jesus as a striker to me. I'm trying to think of who I could put above him. I'm going to have to say he is, but I think, again, that's more because you can't really replace him. Obviously, Haaland would score goals no matter where he is and no matter what system he play in. So if you swapped him out for Haaland, he's going to get the same amount of chances, the same amount of goals, probably more goals, really, considering the championship we're playing in Europe and stuff. But I don't know. I can't think of who I'd replace him with at all. But I think Emery does probably have a long-term system where he wants someone his level to be rotating around him. Duran's obviously that for the future, but yeah, I'm going to have to say, yeah, I didn't think I'd be saying yeah to that when I started this, but yeah, he definitely is now.
I don't know, a striker, it would be Isak for me. I think is second best striker in the league.
I think that's a fair shout. And again, he's a player that I think fits very closely with what Eddie Howe wants to do. And I think that's why that works. But we're here to talk about the Villa. So you mentioned there how you think Ollie Watkins is, to a degree, irreplaceable. I'm just wondering, if one of the bigger boys did come in for one of your players, who is the absolute last player you would want to see go out the door? Who do you think really is irreplaceable and would be just the last player that you'd want to sell at this point?
Emi Martinez, without a doubt. Yesterday, without him, it's probably 5-4-2 at least, minimum. He's not only the fact that he's such a good goalkeeper, but also the fact that he commands so much around the club as well. He's just a person you don't want to lose out of it. We've got so many players through our spine that are so vital to the way we play, but you can always, if we lose them, you lose form for a season, and then it gives Emery time to find a player, mould him, and then eventually it would take 2 years to replace that. I don't think you can replace a keeper like Martinez's quality easily, because you're losing him. You're looking at 3 keepers maximum in the league that are better than him or of equal level to him. So then you're going to try and get those off of those clubs, or hope that you're going to find a young and upcoming keeper somewhere that's also then going to be your vice captain. To me, he's our most irreplaceable asset.
Is that how you view it as well, Sam? Do you think Emi Martinez is the one player Aston Villa couldn't afford to lose?
I wouldn't have gone with Emi Martinez. You make a very strong case for him, but I think someone of like Ollie Watkins, like you say, I think if you're trying to replace him for an Aston Villa system, you'd be searching for quite some time.
Yeah.
Another one that's constantly linked with moves away, but is a phenomenal player and has grown a lot as a player, is Douglas Luiz. I think you look at his impact both on and off the ball, set pieces, penalties, free kicks. He's popped up with a lot more goal involvements this year as well, and I think they've been like crucial for Aston Villa. And that's what you need from the midfield. You can't always be reliant on the likes of Moussa Diaby and Ollie Watkins. So, yeah, for me it'd be someone like Ollie Watkins or Douglas Luiz.
And obviously, big season for Aston Villa back in Europe this year. When Sam spoke to you in pre-season, you spoke about going the West Ham distance. Is that something that you could still foresee, or?
Yeah, 100%. I think the next game is going to be so vital for us to finish top, because we want to lose out on that really irritating knockout phase where you're playing the Europa League dropouts. But as soon as we finish top of the group, I have zero worries about that competition at the moment. I think the problem comes when you've got, if we beat Middlesbrough away in the FA Cup, you've got an FA Cup fixture, league fixtures, if you want to still be challenging there. Emery says that he's actually sort of favouring the league still at the moment, which there's a big debate among Villa fans over what you'd rather prioritise. But I think if we're going to go as strength as we have each time we play in Europe still, I think we've got more than enough to beat the teams that are in there. Alkmaar seem to be our hardest opponents in the group, and they've fallen by the wayside quite a fair bit. That's kind of given me a bit of hope, thinking that if I was so worried about them and we sort of win the way we do against them, then maybe I'm not so worried about the rest of the competition. Of course, things can change. Europe's Europe, and there's a lot of byproducts of playing in Europe that you don't sort of appreciate until you do. But I think personally, I'm not too concerned about not at least matching what West Ham did, but hopefully we do it a bit prettier than they did in the final.
Well, you mentioned there that sort of delicate balance between the league and Europe and how that divides some fans. I'm going to put a scenario to you now, Dan. You can either finish in the top four of the Premier League this season or win the Europa Conference League. But you can only do one. Which would you choose?
Win the Europa Conference League. Top four is so much more important to a club than it is a fan base. Only if you're a reoccurring fan of, say, Arsenal, for example, that's going up week in, week in out to the Champions League group stages, for example, you're able to go to them, you're used to it. That's when it becomes more of a, oh no, we didn't get top four. This was never in my mindset this season. I looked at probably sixth if we're winning the Conference League. I've never seen us win anything apart from a championship playoff trophy, which doesn't count as a major honour. So bear in mind, I don't think I'd go around calling us champions of Europe, which I probably will do when we do. But
I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah. But there is no doubt in my mind I would always take silverware over placement, because it's going to give so much more memory as well. I can't imagine being sat watching us win a game and then go, yes, that's top four. But I can imagine us going, yes, we've won something actual substantial for the first time in way too long for a club of our stature. So I'm not worried about that at all. That's an easy one for me.
And Sam, I wonder, as an outsider looking in, do you think the Unai Emery project, if I can use that sort of well-worn cliche, do you think it does need a trophy to legitimise it, whether it is the Conference League, whether it is the FA Cup? Do you think silverware is the thing that would sort of really solidify what Emery's doing at Villa?
It's a tricky one. I think you look at the way football's going now, and you can be a super successful club but not win anything, and no one will think you're successful. Bear in mind, only one team can win at the end of the season, and other clubs can have their successes. I don't think silverware would define Unai Emery's spell at Aston Villa, especially the way Dan's spoken about the work he's done off the field, sorting out the structure at the club, and how they've gone about their transfer business, and how they've gone about changing the playing style. And you've got some really talented youngsters as well coming through at Aston Villa. Unai Emery's just kind of created a whole different culture, and I don't think that would be defined by a Carabao Cup. I think it's defined by consistency both on and off the field in their dealings. So to give you a definitive answer, no, silverware will not define Unai Emery's spell at Aston Villa.
Dan, same question. Do you think Emery needs silverware to sort of legitimise what he's done, or do you think the good things that he's achieved will sort of stand on their own whether he wins a cup or not?
For me, he doesn't need a trophy. He doesn't need anything to back up what he's done. The way that he's forming the whole club around him, like you mentioned, it's so much, it transcends a trophy at the end of the season. West Ham have won their trophy, but nobody is actually talking about it. So in global football, maybe it doesn't really matter. And Spurs are the club they are, and they are not winning anything. So the fact that they're able to persist with the image of being a Big Six club, which is an image they've earned somehow, that if they're able to achieve that, then there's no reason why he needs a trophy. I think it's more a personal fan thing, is you just want to see your team win something. I don't think the owners are really persistent on him winning something. I think they just want, like you said, progression. They want to see a continuous philosophy being etched through, and you want to see your youth players coming in and then them adopting the same philosophy and it just going and going. They're building a massive sports group based around this sort of Spanish football ideal. So I think personally he doesn't need it. I think the only people that actually care about that are people that don't watch football for footballing reasons, but instead look at sort of the outlines of seasons and the way that, seasons end and who's got what and how many trophies have I got, how many trophies have you got. That's who it matters for more than anything. Of course, it's an ideal situation for a fan, you win something, but for me, I don't think his tenure will be determined by what he wins. It'll be how long he reigns and how consistent we finish, hopefully consistently in Europe. But I think that's what matters more than anything. It is, like you said, the consistency and the performance levels.
So, Dan, I think it's interesting that you touch upon there this idea of Unai Emery not just building a team, but building a club, building an identity. It's something we've seen at Brighton. It's something we've seen at Brentford. Do you feel that when Emery goes, whenever that is, that Villa have sort of built now a structure around him that you'll see, like at Brighton, they might bring in another manager to continue that rather than ripping it all up and starting again?
Yeah, I think if you ask any Villa fan, they'd be more upset if the ownership changed than the management. That's nothing against Unai Emery, obviously. It's obviously if you had to pick one. But like you mentioned, the situation of Unai Emery leaving is, if he left now, then I'd be extremely worried because he hasn't finished his project yet. He hasn't finished. There's so many tweaks that you can see that he wants to make. The man has 2-hour-long briefings after every game with the players, minimum. So you're thinking there, if he's doing that consistently, even when we're winning games 4-5-1, then there's clearly a lot of work that needs to be done around the club. I think give us 2 years, you'll probably see a system where if Unai Emery had to leave, or if he had other commitments, he goes, I would feel a lot more faith then. Obviously our management record has been 2-1 out of positive signs, so obviously the next one's a big telltale sign of whether they're completely fine with it or whether we're relying on a board. But so far the ownership making their managerial choices has been very good. So I'm not concerned at all with the direction the club's going. The only thing I'd be worried about is if the ownership changed.
And Sam, I'm going to come to you first on this one. I'm going to get the neutral view before getting the maybe slightly biased view on this. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Where do you think Aston Villa finished this season? We're pretty much at the halfway stage now, or coming very close to it. Where do you think the Villa end up come the end of the campaign?
I see them finishing probably 7th in the table. I think they'll slip away slightly from the top 4. They won't quite get that top 5 spot, but that's only through latter stages of Conference League that I see them going and potentially winning. Like you said before, I don't see there's not much competition in the Conference League that should scare a team like Aston Villa. So yeah, you'd like to think that once they get to March, April time, and they can really see like the league tables there, and they're not really going to like fluctuate too much. Yeah, I think 7th, and then a Conference League trophy to go with it.
Going for the trophy as well. So Dan, I'm going to come to you on this one. Happy with what Sam's laid out for you there, or do you think the Villa can do it a little bit better?
3 months ago, I'm buzzing with that. That's an ideal situation for me. I mean, either way, you get in Europe again, and you got a trophy to come on with it. To be honest, now you'd obviously be quite upset if you finish in 7th. I can't think of 6 clubs I'd be comfortable finishing above us at all now, personally. If I had to put us somewhere, I would say 4th now. But it depends massively on if an FA Cup run comes. I'm not worried about Europe getting in our way, but definitely if the FA Cup starts creeping around the corner, you're going into the quarters, semis there, you've still got the league going on and the Conference League, and then you're doing a City where you're playing 3 basically cup finals of the league, the FA Cup and the Europe all in 3 weeks, then I'd be worried. But I think right now in the competitions we're currently in, we're obviously probably going to go out in the 3rd round of the FA Cup because that's what we do every year. It's only fair. I think then I'd be really disappointed if we got 7th, especially considering the way that we're progressing, especially the way that other teams have faltered. We've outmatched seasons in the first half so that when Man United eventually, which they always do, start winning games towards the end of the season, when Man City go on their 20-game unbeaten run, Arsenal and Liverpool aren't going to fall off. I just do not see Tottenham and Newcastle having enough run in them to beat us out of it. If Tottenham were going to be better than us this season, they'd be there much higher than they are now. Injuries don't help, but we've also had 2 key injuries and we've built around it. I think that helps considering the fact we're above them in terms of systems and in terms of management style. Newcastle, again, depends where they go up in Europe. If they're going through in the Champions League, they are not going to put as much effort into the league as they think as well, and that's a lot harder competition as well. So I would be incredibly upset if we finish 7th now, but if you're getting the trophy on that, you tend to not really care as much. So yeah, I'm going to go with 4th and perhaps just the 1 trophy. Maybe I won't be too greedy this year.
Limiting yourself to just
yeah,
the
I think
one.
so, yeah.
Is the one you'd prefer? If you could choose, I'm giving you the choice. Obviously, you can't have the Premier League title, to be
that's
realistic.
fair.
But
if we're finishing 4th, then I think I'd prefer the FA Cup personally, because the joy of winning European competition and finishing 5th or 6th or 7th is that you're still in Europe by winning it. Then if you're giving me the choice of an FA Cup, probably arguably the 2nd most prestigious trophy that you can get, then you're probably picking that over Europe, I think. I think a lot of clubs, I think Brighton would probably pick that over a Europa League trophy. But again, it all matters on league position as well then, because you'd rather win the Europa League and finish 6th because you're in the Champions League no matter what then. So yeah, I think I'd pick the FA Cup personally.
Go for the FA Cup.
Yeah.
I always find it interesting to talk to fans and see where the FA Cup comes in their priorities, because it is obviously, or it was a massively prestigious trophy over here, but I feel in the eyes of some it's maybe lost a little bit of importance. But for you, is the FA Cup still a big deal? Yeah,
I've got a key engraved memory is going to Wembley and watching us beat Liverpool 2-1. That's arguably the happiest I've ever been as a Villa fan. Most ridiculous result. No one saw that coming. Steven Gerrard's birthday completely ruined. I think that might be why he did what he did at our club, to be honest with you. And then going to the final and watching us get absolutely smacked around 4-0 is arguably the worst I've ever felt as a football fan. Worse than the relegation season, worse than our worst season in the Championship, because you really, really, really want to be winning things. And the trophy has so much, I mean, it's on public broadcast, it's on BBC every year. It's, I don't have to talk about the Royals, but the Royals are there. It's so important to British culture almost, and I'm not really bothered about the international sphere and what they think of an FA Cup win. Obviously, I think to me it's just that little bit special. It's a nice looking trophy as well. It's a good one to lift, I reckon, and it'll probably be made special considering it's going to be absolutely rammed if we're there with 40,000 Villa fans would be quite nice. Aside from, but then again, you got Europe. You go to Athens and Rhodes and stuff like that, and that's not too bad either. But yeah, I think the FA Cup's definitely the 2nd best trophy you can win for most English clubs.
And something that I did want to just quickly get both your thoughts on. Obviously, can't talk. Well, you'd probably say you can talk about Aston Villa without talking about Birmingham City, but I'm going to choose not to. Obviously, a lot of talk about Wayne Rooney taking over at St Andrews and how he's been getting on. There was that amazing viral image that this weekend, I don't know if you saw, of him sort of looking like Ben Affleck in front of the Birmingham City crest, looking very disappointed with himself. Sam, I'm going to come on to you first about Aston Villa's great rivals, Blues. What do you think of Wayne Rooney at St Andrews? How's that going to end up?
I think we've already seen how it's going to end up. It's just crap. Wayne Rooney's not a very good manager. I think he's proved that time and time again. He went to the MLS to try and do something with DC United. Didn't really work. He's come in as a big name signing for Tom Brady and co. At Birmingham City, and the results speak for themselves. They're a really, really bad football team. There's not much more to be said on Birmingham City.
Okay, well, hopefully there is, because Dan, I'm going to come to you next. I mean, You'd think Sam was the Villa fan in the room with how venomous that takedown of your great rivals was. But Dan, you must be finding it hilarious, mustn't you?
It's the best situation that could have happened. I mean, the managerial sacking they made was bonkers, but it's so Birmingham City. They couldn't handle us being the most talked about club, so they have to make things so bad for them that finally people notice them as the club they are. I mean, I'm fine with it. All I want for them is to have continuous failed eras of different managers. All that matters to me is that, but I don't want them to go to League One. I want them to have such a bad season, just stay up, and I want them to go through this hope every year they go through. Start of this season, we're making this playoff, or we're going to come up, and then they're back down there again. They will never learn what they actually are, which is nothing. All they are is just a rival to a massive club, which is fine for them because they're clearly quite happy with it. I mean, their owner coming out and saying, oh, you know, when we made this change, we were the most talked about club in world football. Yeah, it's because you're a terrible club. No one knows why you make the decisions you make. The stadium's falling down. The fans don't turn up. They have to invite Zorinsky fans into their stadium to support their own team and think that that's a win, and then find out that it's Barcelona fans who travelled to Birmingham and had needed something to do for an afternoon, which was draw 0-0 to Rotherham. So effectively, the Rooney tenure is brilliant, and I can't wait for him to get sacked. They make an upcoming signing as a manager. It looks great, and then they sack him for probably Frank Lampard, and that's how it's going to keep going for them. So to me, it's a brilliant situation. To them, they're happy. They're being talked about. But I think give it 2 months, no one's talking about them because they just stay up by the skin of their teeth, and then cycle repeats.
And just quickly, yes or no, would Steven Gerrard being appointed Birmingham City manager be the funniest thing that could happen?
Yeah, 100%.
There we are. Now, I'm going to offer you one last question here, Dan. It is the festive season. You can have one Aston Villa related Christmas present, something that can happen for the remainder of the season. We'll say trophies are off the table because we've spoke about which trophies you'd like to win, but one thing can happen for the remainder of this season that can be your Aston Villa Christmas present. What would you choose?
That's tough. I'm not going to go for the easy one and say we win every game this season, because obviously I would take that. Me personally, I'd actually have a unbeaten record at home. I'd take winning every single game at home by a goal of 2 goals or more all season, and having that record of the Fortress of Villa Park. The fans really deserve it. There's season tickets I know that have been going up. We watching us lose 6-0 to Liverpool at home by 50 minutes in. They deserve to have every weekend they go up to Villa Park. I'm in a privileged position. I don't get to go every week, and when I do get to go, it's been brilliant so far. I know people that have been going for so long, had nothing but misery. They deserve to have that. And obviously, personally, it's great to be talked about as that club that's able to have this sort of magnitude of a stadium, a great stadium to look at. It's going to be going into the Euros in a few years' time. To then have that as the unbeaten Aston Villa ground, I think that'd be perfect. So I'm happy with that personally, and that pretty much guarantees you as well a good space as well. But not a trophy, I'm fine with that.
That's an excellent choice. Dan, Sam, it has been an absolute pleasure to be joined by you today. This has been the Sportsman Untitled, and we'll see you next time.